So my name is Mari Kim. I'm Philip's mom. Yeah, we lived in England, and because I was older and because I had twins, they scanned me more often. So at 7 weeks, I remember the person scanning me, the doctor said, you know, you have something called the vanishing twin syndrome. And he said, well, this happens often. You know, you start off with twins and one vanishes. Just to prepare you, you know, one twin will pass. And so from the very beginning, Philip was in trouble. I remember my 12-week scan. So women normally have a 12-week scan. At that point, Philip was small, but he was still on the charts. You know, so when they scan you, you're 20 percentile, 30 percentile, and he was slipping lower and lower in the size chart, but he was still on the charts at 12 weeks. He's probably like 10%, you know, and Milana was always all the way at the top. And so they said, well, you know, this one's probably not going to make it. So it just looked more and more grim. His chances of making it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. So, you know, the defining moment of the pregnancy was I actually came home to Hawaii against all the doctor's wishes. But I was 19 weeks pregnant, and I came to see a fetal specialist here. And when he scanned Phillip, it was even worse. So at that point, he had fallen off the charts. He was so small compared to a normal baby. But the worst news of all, they said, you know, something happened and the umbilical cord has gone necrotic suddenly. Basically, your baby's umbilical cord died. He's fallen off the size chart. He's not growing anymore. He's gonna die. And if he dies and your body spontaneously aborts him, the other baby's gonna die as well. And the medical team at that time were convinced that he was going to be brain dead. And they convinced me that it was uncompassionate to bring a child in the world. And the way they actually phrased it was, if he's born and he suffocates and dies, that's fine. But what do we do if he doesn't die? Then you're going to raise a child who's going to suffer. And they recommended to me that I go ahead with feticide. They had to actually go to the high court to get permission. And I went in with the decision that I'd go ahead with the feticide, because what can you do? You know, the doctors are telling you it's not fair to the baby. You have to, and I felt very, very uncomfortable about it. And I had mentioned this before, I wasn't asking the Lord to save my baby's life. I was asking the Lord to take this decision away from me, because it's just, this is going to get emotional. It's the impossible decision, sorry. It's the impossible decision. You cannot choose to take your own child's life when that child has survived for so long. So at night, when I would go to bed, either whether I was in the hospital or at home, this one particular night, I remember I was at home, and you know what I would do? I would hold Phillip like you're holding your baby. And I would, because, I mean, they were so convinced that Phillip wasn't going to make it, and I would think that that's the only time I'm actually going to be able to hold my baby, you know, while he's still alive. So I would hold him every chance I can, because I was so worried that I would never get to hold him again. And I remember getting off my bed and getting on my knees and talking to the Lord, and probably for the first time since I was a child, addressing him as the Lord. The reason it was such a profound moment is because I got to the point where nobody could help us anymore. I mean, everybody was telling me to give up this baby, and nobody could help us. And so I had to turn to the Lord, and I had to just say, you know what, you decide what's supposed to happen, and then you tell me, you know, please stop making me decide. And it was a profound calm. It literally was a physical calm that I suddenly felt, because the Lord told me, actually, he's going to be fine. And I remember having this conversation with Lord saying, but how can he be fine? He hasn't had an umbilical cord for 20 weeks, you know? How can he be fine? But it was, I'm completely undeniable. The Lord said, he's gonna be fine, you know, it's okay. So I'm in the hospital and I remember it's dinner time. I remember this distinctly like it was yesterday. It's dinner time and a paramedic runs to my hospital room. And by this time, I know all the nurses and they're just, their hearts are just pouring out because, you know, we all went through this together. And I remember that a paramedic runs to my room and he says, your son is in the emergency room and he's in trouble. And the nurse, the very senior fetal nurse was with me. I remember her name is Mary and she was a Catholic. And her first reaction, she just said, what else can happen to this poor mom? Like, are you serious? So she comes with me down to the emergency room and Louis, my son, had a seizure, and Louis has never had a seizure before that. It's the first time ever he had a seizure, and the paramedic recognized me and my name and Louis because I'd been there for so long, so he knew I was upstairs, and I think Louis said my mom is upstairs. So I go down and Louis is having a seizure, and Louis has seizures, and Louis is not doing very well. And somehow, so today Louis has epilepsy, and that's the first time he had ever seized. And in the course of watching my son have seizures, and in the course of trying so hard to save one son's life, I really couldn't bring myself to purposely take another son's life. And it was just this like moment of extreme clarity. And so I had asked the Lord in my prayer to take this decision from me, to just, you decide and you make something happen. So I really think that was the Lord's answer to my prayer. He said, okay, you know, I'm gonna show you in a way that you just cannot doubt what is the right thing to do, you know. And so when we came to give birth the next day, we changed our mind. And we told the medical team, actually, we're gonna deliver him. There were so many people because everybody wanted to know what's gonna happen to this unusual baby. And I remember they told me he might come out and be born, and he might be all shriveled and purple and just so declined of any oxygen. So prepare for it. But you know, and they did a very unusual procedure. They took his entire amniotic sac out whole without breaking the waters because they were so scared. And Professor Nicolaides decided to do this, that was his decision. So Milana was born, and then they took the whole, and I remember seeing the entire amniotic sac with Phillip in it, and all the waters were intact. And I remember seeing this tiny little thing squirming inside, which is just something you don't see. It's crazy. And then I remember them putting the sack on another, I don't know what it was, beside me, and then opening the waters and breaking the waters, not in me, and the room was dead silent. Nobody said a word. And as soon as they opened the waters and they took Phillip out, and I actually think I have the photographs of it, he just wailed this like amazing, beautiful cry. Like most beautiful cry in the world. And he was perfect and all pink and cute and like completely he was only that big though. You know, I think he was 8 inches, if I'm not wrong. He was head to, I think it was 8 inches big. So I could hold him like this, head to butt fit. And the most remarkable thing of all, of course, he's a 1 pound baby, so they try to intubate them. They put a breathing tube down their throat. So they immediately started to try to intubate him. And this tiny little baby, whose hand is no bigger than my thumb, took that little hand and grabbed the tube. And he just willed it not to go down his throat, like tiny, and he held it. And I remember the specialist saying, wait, give him and they were trying to get it in, because like, this baby's gonna die, he needs to breathe. And he said, wait, give him a chance, just give him a chance. And sure enough, he started to breathe, and he just started to breathe on his own, which is an impossible for a 1 pound baby to do that, you know. So I was just, and then I remember Angela Huertas, who is a neonatologist. I remember she just came to me, and the only thing she said is, he's perfect. The thing that I learned is that unbelievable faith is so powerful. And when the world is against you, and when logic doesn't seem to make sense, your faith is what you come down to. And the Lord told me one night, you know, you keep faith, and he delivered, you know. It's so simple. The lesson I learned about the Lord is, man, there is power in faith.